stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
Would you believe that we can find some success in this game? I mean, I guess it depends a little bit on your perspective of last session, but we did have a continuance of the assault on the Imperium last time, trying to rescue the prisoners. This time it was all about the ground part of it. We had dispatched with the warships in space and left Bash to basically be the one to deal with them as Emile went down planetside and did a ground assault based on cutting their way through. They were able to find the prisoner's location, find out about the whole firefight that was going on thanks to intercepted radio communications from the Imperium members that were dealing with it. So Emile makes a device, cuts his way in through the side, they flank the members of the Imperium that were attacking. The Imperium and the prisoners wipe them out. They reconvene. Now, this is not all of the Imperium. There are still other Imperium members that are not disposed of, that weren't wiped out in that firefight, but we reconvened, talked with everybody, and here's the part that was a little bit less successful. In dealing with the tension between Emile and Vert, Emile tried to explain everything in his saying, like, hey, come with me, I'm going to get you out of here. Vert made him submit to his not-seen-in-a-long-time ability to hold people in a thrall of only telling the truth, and under that geas, Emile admitted that he was intending to leave Vert behind, to just strand him here, to take everybody else, but that Vert had lost his chances. Everybody was shocked by this, including Emile, and it shocked Vert enough to lose concentration on his little truth beam thing. Emile doubled down on it, saying, clearly it's the truth, but it's also true that I'm not intending to harm anybody else. We can all get out of here. Vert's lost too many chances. And in that process, Cypher backed Emile up, saying, yeah, why are we listening to Vert anyway? It's the short version. She stood behind Emile, doubling down on the whole situation. Valkyrie went on that side as well. Unfortunately, it was a miscalculation, as nobody else was taking that position. And so everybody else in the room started just kind of surrounding and encroaching that group. Emile, knowing that trouble was a-brewing, that there was no way this was going to turn out well, he threw himself and Valkyrie and Cypher to the ground while triggering the massive electrical burst on the profit margin. It shattered all kinds of terminals, killed some of the prisoners, stunned others, and at the very least surprised everybody and threw them off their game with what we described as basically being like a gigantic flashbang. With that stun, Emile was able to start ushering Valkyrie and Cypher out of the room, along with Ironsides, who was also there and not turning against Emile. So the four of them started hustling out of the room. They have begun their process to do what they can to get back to the Beowulf first, because the race is on. Now this week, I do want to set a vignette. This one, I do have an idea in mind. It's going to be relatively simple and short, but I was thinking about, what did we establish about this ship? And we spent a whole session establishing all kinds of details about it. And because of how smoothly things went in the ground assault last time, there was not really any reason to address them or bring them to the forefront. It just made sense that we didn't need to worry about all the various kind of hazards that we established in here. But the end of the session, Emile triggers this big, massive electrical burst. And one of the things we established about the profit margin, when we were figuring out different points of interest, there's one that we established to be a room that is storage for a bunch of energy tanks. These are the compact ways that they can store the massive amounts of energy, as we calculated, potential terawatts of energy that they could collect from the quasar array. Now, they haven't used that recently. We established that it probably wasn't utterly filled to the brim. In fact, we knew part of the reason why they had gone down to this planet was they needed to refuel. But they had been kind of doing that a little bit. And when we established a hazard for that room, we established the potential for a huge fire or energy surge. So, the vignette is simple, but as thus. The cinematic version of this vignette is set we start off, we're just like a camera inside of an empty room. And it's the room with all these tanks of energy, which we said were about the size of, like, imagine carrying like a propane tank, like the type of thing that you would use to fuel like an outdoor grill or something, like about that size. A little heavy, but not too cumbersome. And it's a room full of all of these things. And the camera is just sitting there, and it's empty in here, it's quiet, but we can hear through the walls, muffled, the confrontation going on between Emile and Vert. We can hear it getting heated. We hear Emile's lines about how it's equally true that he means nobody else any harm, that they can all come aboard the Beowulf, just not Vert. We hear muffled through the walls what sounds like Cypher defending him. It's the whole end of the scene there, as we hear from the perspective of this room, as if we're one of the tanks, just like sitting on a rack. And then there's a little bit of a quiet, and then after that beat of silence, we see the electrical burst just blast through the door in here. It comes through the other side, this wave that rolls over our perspective. And then we see various of the other tanks in here start just like shaking and quivering, and then one by one, just little blasts and bursts as they're not able to take it anymore. There's something wrong with like release valves or something. And they just do their own secondary blasts. And it culminates in a fiery explosion that blows the door off of here and just like rushes all through in different directions through vents, and like the room is just obliterated. And this burning liquid just like spills out, goes under the seam of the door, it spills into vents, it's getting carried all around here. And then before long, the perspective is just utterly filled with smoke. And that's the vignette. It's just quite simply, there is definitely going to be fire throughout this ship as a result of the explosion. Now, I think realistically, if that room were really close enough that we could hear the muffled conversation, they might well have been pretty fucked by the fire as well and that explosion. But we're taking cinematic license here. We're somehow close enough to hear it, but far enough that they don't get just immolated by that first explosion. Again, cinematic license. So alright, we're going to take our 1 momentum here, bringing us up to +6. Again, for a quick review, our sliders are pretty bad overall. Health 1, Spirit 1, Supply 0, Integrity of the Beowulf is 0, we are out of EMP. Our momentum's pretty good. Oh, I did forget to mention, we got a message from Bash about how we need to get our butts up there because it turns out that the Imperium warships have come back online a little bit faster than we were anticipating. And so now Bash is having to contend with one of them, but the other one is probably not too far off from also being a problem. Down here on the ground, we've not seen any signs of that yet, though, so let's get back to the scene at hand. We had made a little bit of progress on our attempt to make it back to the Beowulf. We have 2 progress out of 10. We have not yet filled any of the like danger clock. There's a 4-segment clock that we're doing this against. But let's get back in the action as we continue this scene challenge. So last we left off, they had made it out into, like, out of the room. They were no longer surrounded. They had begun kind of running, but one of the big challenges that we had was they're going to get chased down. We need to lose the mob behind us somehow. Certainly if we have any intention to, like, take the time to cut our way out rather than get all the way back to the already open side of the ship or finding another way. Like if we're just racing, then that's not important, but we might need to lose them. But now that we have this fire, we've established another hazard. So I think the danger that we're facing as we continue this is it's now thick with smoke in here, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's very hot, it's smoky, the fire is itself a hazard we need to avoid, and the smoke inhalation, all of that. But it does probably make it a little bit easier to get lost. So maybe we can even secure an advantage by kind of taking a route that leans into the smoke, just so we can use that to hide in a little bit better. Now, I wouldn't want to do that unless we have an ability to breathe a little bit better. Maybe it's just a matter of holding our breath. I don't know. Let's see. What would we reasonably do? Ironsides will be fine. They don't need to worry about it. But all the humans, Emile, Cypher, and Valkyrie, they wouldn't want to be breathing in all that smoke. This is a stock ship, though. I mean, this one isn't out of supply, so maybe. Here's what we're going to do. Emile is going to try and scavenge up some, like, breathing masks or something by just finding equipment on the ship. As they're running, he's looking out for places where they might have that sort of thing, just safety equipment. Because after all, Emile is a scavenger. We can try and do functionally a resupply by scavenging what's kind of the equivalent of an abandoned site in order to try and try and find these breathing apparatuses. Yeah, let's do it that way. So during a scene challenge, we're not literally going to do the resupply move. I'm going to treat this as secure an advantage, at least for the purposes of the rules. But because it is filling in for resupply, I'm going to count my scavenger asset because it's definitely still relevant here. We're going to take a +1 and get a 1 momentum on a hit. This is with wits because you got to be able to pay attention pretty quickly as they're otherwise moving, like kind of running through the environment. Having your wits about to understand like where would make sense to even look on the ship. You might be able to lead the group towards that location. So this is going to start off wits with a +1 as secure an advantage. Okay, we start with a weak hit here. So we are successful, so we either get the 2 momentum or the 1 on our next move. We don't get to make any progress, but we don't fill in any circles, so that's good. Now, I was framing this as the 1 on our next move, like this was supposed to really help us with the shadow move, and I feel like it's more fitting to be that than the momentum. If anything, this is slowing us down. So momentum doesn't really seem like a good fit. But we are successful. Emile finds an area that's nearby where, like, recognizes where they've got just other emergency kind of equipment or maybe suits to be able to go out in space. And it's got just relevant related supply in order to be able to do like out of ship maintenance. And so as they're running by, Emile, it's almost like a cartoon where like we see from the side as they just dash past and there's these like equipment on the side. And as he runs past, they're just gone. He just like snatches them on the fly. We're going to say because it's a weak hit, he doesn't actually have enough masks for all of them. It's like one mask that he'd be able to pass around. And they just keep sitting there in silence sharing it. And that's why it's not a strong hit. So he finds this mask. And now we're going to try and lose the group with a face danger with shadow with a +1. He leads them into the smoke, seeing this as an opportunity. They get into the thick of it. They start passing around the mask and waiting, seeing if they're caught or not. However, that is a miss. We are not good enough at shadow. It came really close, but we need to be even slightly better to get even a weak hit. Challenge dice came to play. That was a 9 and a 7. So we fail, or momentary success is undermined by a dramatic turn of events. Fill a clock segment and pay the price. On a miss with a match, fill 2 segments and pay the price. So let me fill that segment first. I think it is more interesting if the failure isn't because they find us. That part's working. But in order to be in the thick of the smoke, like where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe there's a secondary explosion that happens yet again, which is, again, covering for us and making it easier for us to stay hidden from the recovering members of the Vault Hunters. We're pretty hidden from them at the moment, but I like the idea of maybe a secondary explosion or something like rocks and breaks a section of the roof, like some kind of physical hazard like that is going to cave in on us, maybe cause some immediate harm. Maybe it's just something we need to immediately react to. Maybe even separates the group a little bit. Yeah, these all sound like cool things. I think I like that idea that the rubble kind of from this explosion and the weakening of the fire, it separates the group. And, you know, Emile's vow here is to rescue the prisoners. And at this point, we've redefined that to be Valkyrie and Cypher. At least we're angling to. And, of course, we've established they only have the one mask, and they're in the thick of smoke. So who is separated? What's the group here? I'm going to do this on an oracle, because I think any version could be interesting. So here's how I'm going to do this. There are 4 members of the group, which is a 25% chance that any one of them is separated from the rest. So I'm going to start off rolling unlikely, because unlikely odds are 25%. We're going to go through and find out, like, at least one person has to be separated from the others. So if this doesn't work, we're going to redo it. But I'm going to start with Ironsides. Is Ironsides separated from the core group, as I'm thinking of it now? Ironsides is not. He rolled 75. He was really not that. So then, as an ad hoc way to do it, I'm just going to move up the ranks every time because now it's closer to a 50-50 because there are only 3 people. So we're going to say is, every time there's a no anyway. If there's a yes, I'll keep it at the same odds. This is just my ad hoc ruling. Is Valkyrie separated from the core group? No. Okay, so we got to move up again to likely now. Is Cypher separated from the core group? Yes, Cypher is separated, so I'll leave it at likely as I ask for Emile. Maybe a 50-50 split. Is Emile separated from the others at this point? I won't even say core group. Like, is it Emile and Cypher with Valkyrie and Ironsides on the other side? So is Emile with Cypher? Yes, he is. Okay, so it's indeed that 50-50 split, which means we need to find out who has the oxygen. Now, there are two people that might have been using it on one side and one on the other, so it seems more likely that the Emile group has it. But even still, I think it's more dramatically interesting doing it as a 50-50. It could go either way. So, does Emile's side have the breather? Yes. Which was the more, in theory, the side that makes more sense anyway. So right now, Valkyrie is with Ironsides, like on the other side of some rubble, and Valkyrie can't breathe. Now, one last question to just really set the scene here. We're going to do this as a 50-50 as well. Is Valkyrie, can Valkyrie just, go back to where we came from, out of the smoke, towards the Vault Hunters, which is its own danger, but could Valkyrie avoid the smoke by just going back? Or is Valkyrie on the far side? So, 50-50, the way I'll phrase it is Valkyrie on the far side of the rubble? Now, you know what? I'm not going to ask that question, because I think for this to be a proper pay the price, it's more dramatically interesting if the problem is that Valkyrie is trapped on the far side and can't breathe. Or at least Valkyrie could maybe try and find a way out, but the smoke seems to just get thicker and it's disorienting and you really can't see very well. So right now that's the problem. Valkyrie is kind of screwed. So there's a lot of narrative paying the price right now. Should there be a mechanical one as well? For the moment, no. I'm going to accept all of that narrative and the mechanical pay the price of we did have to fill in a segment. There's more opportunity for the Vault Hunters to catch up. So, with that being the case right now, how do we proceed? We certainly could try and work with Ironsides to just clear this rubble. Ironsides is a beefy machine. Presumably wouldn't be thrown by that. But Ironsides also isn't actually a connection. We wouldn't get any mechanical benefit from that, and that would be an iron move, and Emile would be terrible at that. We could certainly throw Valkyrie the breather and just retreat ourselves. Trying to think quickly on this, that seems fitting enough. Let's go with that. So, one last question for the Oracle, because this could change what kind of move we have to make here. 50-50, does Emile have the breather, or does Cypher have the breather? Because Cypher, despite being a friend, may be a little bit too panicky about getting rid of the breather and throwing it away. May not be thinking quite straight. So, does Emile have the breather? No. Very firmly no. Would have been a no even on almost certain. Emile doesn't have it. Cypher does. Cypher doesn't want to give it over. Cypher is too panicked at the moment. Emile could try and just snatch it, and I think that's what he's going to do. Not because he wants to be mean about it, but I do think it just makes the most sense that there's no time for him, there's no time and he hasn't breathed in a little while. He can't just make a compelling argument for hey, calm down, you'll be okay. Valkyrie needs it more. There's no time for that shit, and he's running out of breath himself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to treat this as a face danger. This is definitely risky. Dealing with, a panicky person and holding your breath this long and trying to do a physical struggle. I think it's most fitting that this is an iron move. If it's about kind of wrestling over an object, you could make the argument for edge, but I think it's a weak argument. Edge, the argument being just about doing it quickly enough, but the real dramatic tension is about the physical struggle. So we're going to face danger with iron and probably hope our momentum carries us. He tries to snatch this breather away so that he can give it back to Valkyrie. And hopefully get a breath for himself first. Here we go. Iron move. All right, we get a strong hit. The dice just wanted that to happen. No momentum needed. We're successful and mark progress on a strong hit with a match. Mark progress twice. Now, it's a bit of a stretch for me to know exactly why this is helping us make it back to the Beowulf, but it is helping us deal with our current situation, so it makes sense. So Emile successfully snatches the breather away from Cypher and takes a quick breath of it himself, and then is going to try and toss it over the rubble towards Valkyrie. I think this is really more of a secure an advantage. There's nothing that dangerous about this. This is also a face danger. Again, if we make progress, it's a bit of a stretch for like why this is helping us make it back to the Beowulf, but it's the same sort of reason. If we can get Valkyrie the breather, Cypher and I can retreat a little bit, and we've bought ourselves time to not have to like give our positions away by just like being frantic. We can stay hidden and then maybe cut our way out. Because right now we've lost the crowd. For the moment. So alright, we're facing danger. This one is an edge move. This is about the agility to indeed find the gap, throw it through, all of that thing. Oh, you know what? I shorted myself 1 momentum. Because when we secured an advantage to find this breather to begin with, I forgot that my scavenger asset does also give me 1 momentum on a hit. So we should have 7 momentum, not 6. It doesn't make any difference. It would not have allowed me to avoid that miss when it came up. Like nothing would have happened differently. But now I have it set up correctly. Anyway, face danger with edge. With 7 momentum backing us up. Let's see if we can get this breather over to Valkyrie and have her notice and everything and get it right on target. It's a miss that we could burn into a weak hit. Incidentally, that 1 momentum recalculation is not the difference on that. It would have been able to burn it either way. I think I'd like to burn it for a weak hit. I mean, we need to. So, burning that, and trying to not think too much about the word burn right now as like, it's hot in here. We're pulling this off and we're avoiding the smoke, but like, this is not a comfortable area to hang around in. We can't be here just forever. So we mark progress, but also encounter a complication or setback. Envision what occurs and fill a clock segment. So we do 1 of each. Let me do that first. So we're up to 2 out of 4 on the clock and 4 out of 10 on the progress track. I think the reason it's a weak hit is indeed, like it clatters into the smoke and Valkyrie can't like immediately find it. And it also it made some noise and stuff. It makes some noise, draws a little bit more attention to this area filled with smoke. But that's not the complication. The complication or setback is going to be unrelated to that. Emile leads Cypher away from the kind of smoky area. They find their way towards a door in the smoke. Because they got to retreat from this. They can't stick around. They're not going to be able to breathe in here. But they find another room with like a pretty well secured door. So it should hopefully not be as smoky in there, maybe. They get to a door. It's currently, like, the reason it's so well secured is it's functioning as a fire door right now. And because systems are malfunctioning, because a lot of things got blown up, it's like jammed closed. Not like physically jammed, but it is not in a state where you could easily open it. Like, it's not intended for you to be able to. And so one would have to force this open. Maybe, if Emile is lucky, it can be accessed electronically. I'm going to roll on an oracle for that. Like, is the door panel itself functional? Like, can one bypass whatever's locking it down? I'm going to ask the oracle on that and put it as unlikely, because that's part of the reason why we're having this issue. So can it be manipulated electronically? No, it cannot. So that panel is busted. In order to get through here, you'd have to force it open. But we can hear, like, around the corner, just outside of the smoke, we're really not far from Vault Hunters. So abandoning this course would be, like, we'd have to show ourselves. There'd be no way around that. And so, being kind of between a rock and a, hot place, I guess, we're going to try and force our way through this door so we can get a breath and hang out for a little bit in a concealed area. Now, can we try and secure an advantage here? I do have my cutter. I bet that could probably use the cutter on like just the right area to weaken parts of the door and make it a little bit easier to force open. Working together with Cypher on this, using that cutter, I think Emile could. It seems reasonable to me. So Emile's like kneeling down in the smoke as they're like looking towards each other, and like they are getting breath. They're just like they're doing it through their shirt or something, like trying to breathe in as little of the smoke as possible and stay down low. But you don't want to be here long. So they're down low. Emile gets out the cutter as they recognize like better this way than that way, and starts trying to cut through this door, at least enough to be able to force it open. So this is going to be an iron move, but I'm going to get the benefit of my cobbled together tool, which means we get a +1 when we use this, but if we roll a 1 on the action die, it's broken. Permanently. So here we go. This is a secure and advantage. This is just trying to weaken the door. I guess, well, I could do it either way. Yeah, I'm going to do this as secure and advantage first. This is weakening the door, trying to like cut the right parts to then hopefully successfully move it open with a face danger. No, you know what? I'm thinking through kind of the implications of that. I have the +1 now. If I secure an advantage, I mean, yeah, I could get 2 momentum on it, or a +1 on my next move is the likely thing if we get a weak hit. If we get a strong hit, we could have both, but broadly speaking, we're going to be in the same situation. We might have a little bit more momentum, but we're still going to have to make an iron move with maybe the +1 that we already have. I'm just going to skip to that. And I think this works better as a face danger anyway. This is dangerous. We don't have the ability to just sit back and make preparations. So, another iron with a +1 as we try and open up this door with help from the tool. Alright, sadly, the dice rolled a 9 and an 8, so even without this being iron, it would have been hard for it to come by. Like, I rolled pretty well, and I don't break the thing. I rolled a 5 on the die. So, we got a 7 versus a 9 and an 8. Momentum wasn't going to help us either way, so we fail or momentary success is undermined by a dramatic turn of events. Fill a clock segment. And pay the price, of course. So 3 out of 4 segments are now filled in on this. And again, I think the reality of this is, it's not that the Vault Hunters catch up with us. I think they've lost us enough. They're just going towards, well then screw it, like, we don't need to find them. We need to make it to the Beowulf in time. Like, they're just on their way out. They're not hunting us down. That's not the danger and complication. Like, they're getting closer and closer to running their way back out of the ship. We've lost a lot of clock on that. No, there's a new danger here. We start messing around with the door so much, it draws some attention from somebody inside. The door that we were trying to muscle open, making a big old ruckus, and like there's all these sparks and stuff on the other side, it like really drew attention. This is the cafeteria. And as we established, the cafeteria is usually home of one Karthik Kwan, the closest thing to an undead person that we've ever established in this game. A person who is perpetually in a state of just like ablating away their body inside of a suit. But if Karthik continues to consume enough matter, they're then able to keep that going and not fully die, like rejuvenate all that was lost. Because yeah, I think we described it before. It's like they're sublimating off like a green gas that's getting caught inside the suit, so it's hopefully not being breathed by everybody else. But Karthik is in there. Karthik had been continuing to just like keep eating things to avoid the inevitable. And so as we're working on the door, it suddenly gets forced open from the inside. Because why don't we say, we can full on like Frankenstein this guy and say that Karthik has also, with this undead, gotten a kind of undead strength to him. And so standing tall over the crouched to the ground Emile and Cypher, there is this person in a kind of like old looking spacesuit. Why don't we go like full on? It's got like the fishbowl kind of dome and everything where we can just see this sublimating green gas inside the bowl and the head of somebody who is just coming apart at the seams. You know, there are these like jagged lines in the face of just like almost like gash marks throughout, but they're not bloody and gash. They're just like as if the skin is breaking apart into different tectonic plate pieces that are shifting apart from each other. And the green gas is like coming out from them and swirling around the bowl. And you can see bits of like skull and musculature in there. This is kind of like, picture like Two-Face from The Dark Knight. Like it's kind of that sort of look where it's like, oh geez, like you are seeing way too much of the inside. I don't think Karthik has lost that much face, but there are sections that are reminiscent of that sort of a look. Karthik forces open the door, kind of ripping it off the side, and then sees intruders here and suspects that they're the cause of everything going haywire. And I think it's also fair to say, if we can continue to Frankenstein Karthik by saying like Karthik doesn't deal too well with everything being like electrical and on fire and going haywire, like all of this chaos is really tamping down the humanity that might have still been inside Karthik. So Karthik is looming over and sees these people and just in fright tries to just like slam down. Oh, I got a better visual for this. So Karthik like ripped the door back off and is holding this giant like iron door, which is like searing, it would be searing flesh. Like we can hear it kind of like almost melting through the gloves of the suit because that thing is really hot. That door has really heated up. It's not like red hot or anything, but we can hear the kind of sizzling as it's weakening the gloves and maybe letting the gas escape. Holding up this door, and then in frightened response to Emile and Cypher, tries to just slam the door down on them and like shove them down to the ground, trap them beneath this super hot iron door. So, again, it's going to be all just a narrative paying the price. This is what's keeping us from being able to escape right now. There is now a door incoming, threatening to trap us. And we're still in the thick of the smoke here, not really being able to breathe all that well. So we're coughing through and everything. I think the first thing we got to do, like, we have to face danger with edge just to avoid this door to begin with. Just not be utterly trapped beneath this. So, making an edge roll here, and let's see what happens. I'd love an opportunity to secure an advantage, but we're going to need a different situation for that, because, yeah, that's a miss. Our die did not try, and it's against a 7 and a 6 here. So, oh, that means we fail on the clock all the way. That's the last segment. So we fail because our success is undermined by being trapped beneath this door in the thick of all this smoke and fire and sizzling. And technically, we still might somehow make it out of here through something dramatic. We have finished the scene challenge, oddly enough. I have some little ideas for how this might work if somehow we actually get a success out of this, but we have to roll on 4 progress. I have an idea just in case, but let's see what happens. We need to finish the scene. Here we go. No, it's a double 7 miss with a match. We are not successful. So don't worry about any of those ideas I had about how this could possibly make sense that we would succeed despite it. It almost looked like it was going to turn into a weak hit. It just barely didn't have one of the dice land on a 3, and then it moved one more side over to the 7. So it said, no, you know what? A miss with a match is better in this moment. So first off, the text is, on a miss, you fail or are undermined by a dire and costly turn of events, pay the price. As makes sense. So here's what that price looks like. Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, not just focusing on just running out of here, betting that we'd be able to cut our way out if we just lost the group. No, we didn't. Vert and all of that crew, they get out, they hail the Beowulf, they get on. They make it there first. Now, there is still crew left on the Beowulf, and they have not turned on Emile. So they are not inherently just going to abandon Emile, necessarily. I think we've got a clock on that, though, because they're going to be outnumbered by the prisoners. And the prisoners intend to take over. So we're going to start a clock that is representative of like when the ship is just leaving. So let's do that. Here is a 4 o'clock that is the Beowulf, Strands, Emile, and Co. And I'm going to fill the first segment on that as part of the pay the price. They have reached the Beowulf. They are working on either... Right now they're trying to do it the nice way. They're going to explain what happened and try and convince Dash and everybody left there that they just need to take off. Part of the reason why Dash is going to push back, though, is Ironsides is here. Dash doesn't want to leave Ironsides. So they're going to be arguing back and forth. But eventually, over time, they're not going to win. If we take too long, that's just going to happen. More imminently, though, we definitely need to take a hit to our health. And we are going to be, I think, held beneath this door like this. We're starting to burn up. And I'm going to roll on an oracle here yet again. Because I don't know what I like more. Does Karthik, take us prisoner or whatever? Or, given his, like, rage and everything, and not really thinking straight. Do we just like get knocked out by the door and the smoke inhalation and stuff, and then Karthik goes off on his own to do something else, potentially chasing after the Vault Hunters? They may have their own problems with him. I'm asking the Oracle, so I'm just putting this as 50-50. Does Karthik leave Emile and Cypher behind? Yes, he does. Okay, so Karthik's sort of like animalistic Frankenstein rage continues. He smashes them down with the door and like steps over them and leaves, trying to get out of the fire, and who knows what Karthik's doing. Karthik becomes part of just the nebulous, he'll come back when it's dramatically appropriate, perhaps. We need to suffer some danger, some harm here, though. Because I think the force of that probably knocks us unconscious and burns us a little bit, and it's not going to be for long, but long enough to have all of this shit happen, and then, you know, we're going to come to in a different situation, but before that happens, we're harmed for it. So, I think this is worthy, with all the smoke and all the fire and the door and everything. This is worthy of the 2 harm, I think. 3 might be appropriate, but because this is cinematic, I'm going to lean towards 2 instead of 3. Like, if this is real life, like, we're probably dead just right away. But we have some aces in the hole, perhaps. After all, Valkyrie and Ironsides are still out there, and they could be working on the rubble or getting back to us. They might be able to save us, so maybe that's why it's only 2 harm. Now, I have 1 health, which means I can't suffer 2 harm. I can suffer the 1 and then lose a momentum, bringing us down to 0. And because we're at 0 health, I have to try and endure this harm, which means I'm going to be rolling my iron against it, which is not great. We get... Okay, it's a weak hit. Now, we're not wounded. I could get the health back if I just lose momentum, but right now, I don't want to go into negative momentum. I mean, I don't ever want to. That's not even a right now thing, but what I meant to say is right now, I don't want to make that trade. So it at least doesn't get any worse. We're not wounded, which does suggest to me that perhaps shortly after we're knocked down by this door and like out of commission for a bit, Valkyrie and Ironsides do indeed manage to rescue us and pull us aside to somewhere else. It takes some time. They make it. Valkyrie gets us some oxygen. We get out of the smoke, and we accept that we just need to take the time to cough out all this smoke. Like, we're not in any state to try and get to the Beowulf right now. You know, I stepped away briefly just to use the bathroom, and I was reflecting during that time. I don't think I properly represented the fact that we had a double 7 miss with a match when we finished that vow. And I decided, what's all this deal with there being a clock on the Beowulf stranding Emile? There was a double 7 miss with a match. And so I decided, rather than fill in 1 segment on the Beowulf stranding Emile and co., we're going to fill in 3 segments. We are 1 additional failure or time waste away from that's just going to happen. We really don't have time to dilly-dally. That feels more like that we had a double 7 miss with a match. I almost made them just entirely take off, but I think this is the tension of this is better than just, well, they're gone. So Valkyrie and Ironsides, they drag and carry Emile and Cypher to some other area where we can cough out the smoke a little bit, come to. And she's over our bodies, kind of like shaking us, trying to get us to come to, knowing like we don't have time. She hadn't heard anything from the prisoners. And so we eventually do come to, and it's in... Let's find out. What kind of room do we find ourselves in? I'm going to roll on the derelict oracles just to find out, like, what kind of zone, what rough sort of room are we in? So we're on a starship. We're in a zone of research, which, given the nature of this ship, you know, the giant quasar capturing array, that suggests to me maybe this is research related to that, like better ways to store the fuel or to alter, or maybe to alter that field. It's related to that somehow. It may not literally be a room where they do research, but it is related to that quasar capture. Maybe this is a sort of control room for it. And, you know, the room is fucked. Like, all the terminals are going haywire. Like, the computers are non-operational. But this is a room where one would ordinarily calibrate and set it up. Like, when you're getting ready to capture, there's a lot of, like, specific settings you have to dial in order to make it work. And it's also controlling the, like, you know, how much energy can be sent into storage versus just needs to be bled off through other channels and incinerated. as we talked about with the incinerator room. This controls all of that, which it makes sense that that wouldn't be too far from the incinerators. So it's a room full of terminal. In fact, I mean, honestly, it sounds a lot like the room that we were in when the initial blast happened. So it may have been that like that was an area that wasn't that smoky, and because of where the fire is, like that's just the direction that made the most sense. And so we're dragged back into that room where it all went down. We come to and we know like we're far away from getting out of the ship, and of course we've lost time. I think we're going to start by saying that Emile needs to find out, like, what is the state of the ship? Like, now that they're not literally running, maybe he can try and buy some time. Like, he's going to get a status report on what's going on with the Beowulf. Like, try and just talk to them about it. Because before he couldn't do that because he had to run away and stay hidden. But now he can pull out his radio, get in contact, and alert them to the situation. So I am going to be kind to what I need in this situation and say that we are securing an advantage here with Hart by just checking in with Dash and like whoever's our contact up above. We're finding out what is the deal both on the Beowulf and on Newton's Folly, like what's going on, what's our status, so we can make informed decisions from there. So, Emile radios in. I am not doing this as gather information because we're not searching for clues, conducting an investigation, analyzing evidence, or doing research. That's not quite what's going on here. Even though we are trying to find out, like we're trying to get information, but not really through that sort of channel. What we're really trying to do is build our momentum back out of zero. So anyway, making our heart move as we check in and just get everybody to give us, with clear heads and communication, here's what's happening. Now this might, once we find out, give us a +1 to maybe try and compel them to not leave without us, but let's see. A double 10 miss with a match. Okay. Now the pay the price is not going to be like immediately mechanically a problem because we're just checking in on what's happening. So we fail or our assumptions betray us. Now, this is a double 10 match. This is the biggest this is the worst they get. We need this to hit hard. I think that there are a few things that we assumed here that are going to bite us in the ass. First off, we radio in thinking Dash is going to respond, and it's Vert. You know, we're filling in the last segment on that clock easily. That's just part of the miss. The situation is Vert responding. The situation is the Vault Hunters have the Beowulf again. Thank you for providing a ride off the planet, you miserable asshole. And we can hear the rumbling of it taking off. But that's not the match. A few other things happen here. First off, both of the Imperium warships are just completely online, active, and I think, because they outnumbered Bash on Newton's Folly, they're definitely winning that fight. I'm going to just find out on an Oracle, have they utterly destroyed Newton's Folly or just disabled it? Let's find out. Honestly, I'm just leaving this 50-50. I don't know where their heads are at right now. So, is Newton's Folly utterly destroyed? No. Okay, so they've disabled Newton's Folly, and they're active. The Beowulf has taken off and is leaving Vert behind. I don't think they haven't killed the crew or anything. They're just taking over. They wouldn't want to kill all the other Vault Hunters. Dash was not able to stop them. But in addition to all that, there's another face that we have not given nearly enough time to in what we've established about the profit margin. We had this big buildup with the anonymous kind of enforcer who was trying to keep all the prisoners in line, who seemed to have some manner of empathic abilities, understand what people were feeling. Clearly, they're not one of the people who's just died in the explosions and stuff. We gotta have a situation with them. We need our Kylo Ren back. And so they come into the room with a cadre of other Imperium people with their guns trained. They've got Emile and Valkyrie and Cypher just pinned up against the wall, cornered in the room. Not surrounded, but cornered. They mean business. And our anonymous robed figure says,
"You have caused a great deal of mayhem aboard my ship."
And I think that while saying that, we notice that coming out of the hood, there are just these little, hard to notice but present, little beginnings of wisps of the sort of green gas that we saw from Karthik Kwan. It seems that Karthik in all of his rage and getting out of here and doing things that frayed at his suit, he crossed paths with this Kylo Ren-like figure, and it seems this zombie thing is a little bit contagious. It does not seem that the person in the hood recognizes that they're showing the first signs of it, but coming out of the hood, these little wisps are present. Seemingly not from anybody else there in the Imperium. I don't know that anybody else has noticed it yet, but Emile clocks it, and he recognizes it as being similar to what he saw with Karthik. Now, he barely saw Karthik, and it was a very smoky environment, and Emile definitely doesn't have the full context, so I don't know that Emile knows to be as afraid of the potential of becoming this just undead creature as is right in front of him. He doesn't know the danger that's there, but it is present. What he does know is this group means business. I think I'm not going to go immediately into this being a combat necessarily, but it's teetering right on the edge of one. I think it's very likely that that's where it's going to go, but I'm going to give the possibility that maybe Emile can talk his way out of it. The robed figure continues, pointing a gloved hand Emile's direction, and says,
And you, this is not the first ship where you've caused mayhem. You are the one who stole our fighters.
And I think that's actually the window that Emile might be able to use here to talk his way out of this being a fight. Because of course he knows he doesn't have a ride out of here right now. The Beowulf is taken from him. Last he heard, the Imperium seems to be pretty much in control, but one little thing he has on his side, maybe he can use the fact that he knows where the fighters were left. Maybe, just maybe, he can use those as leverage. Because they can't just track them. He disabled the tracking device. Like, they worked on that. The anti-theft devices on all of them, those have been disabled after the big problem from before. So they couldn't just track them. And it seems that the ships are a bit of a precious commodity to the Imperium. So Emile is going to seize on this and try to talk out of this situation. He doesn't want it to go ugly. So he's indeed going to relay that, saying, yeah, I did steal those ships. And you may have noticed they're not here today. I don't know if you've gotten report of the count that have been seen out here, but not all of them are around. If you and the Imperium want them back, you're going to need to leave us alive. You need our help. I offer them to you as a bargaining chip if you can get us back off this planet and help me re-seize the Beowulf. That's my ship. A mutiny has taken place. Get it back into my hands, and the Imperium can have their ships back. He also, he throws in the other things. Like, there's probably a little bit of a back and forth where the robed figure is like,
We can track them down. I don't need you.
if you believe that to be true, you would have already done it. All you've actually managed to do is revealed to me the Imperium hasn't actually found them yet. Otherwise, you would have said as much. And if you could track them down, you would have already known their location. So nice try, but no. I'm your only way to get them back. So let's make this compel roll. We're definitely... I think the one that's most fitting here is we're bartering. I mean, pretty literally. Emile is including everybody in the situation. Like, he wants Valkyrie and Cypher. Like, all of them need to get out of here. He needs the ship back. He's bartering ship for ship. He's got something that they want. Like, I think there are all the reasons to think this could work out. So let's make the move. It's just a regular heart move. Can he get this figure to agree with him to make this trade? It's a weak hit. They'll do what you want or agree to your conditions, but their agreement comes with a demand or complication. Envision their counteroffer and take +1 momentum. So we're back up to positive momentum. We have 1. And I think this deal, in order to get the Beowulf back and get them a ride off of this planet, is worthy of another tick on Rescue the Prisoner. So I'm going to give myself progress on that. We are now up to 7 boxes. But there is a complication to this. A counteroffer. Clearly Emile is onto something with the idea that what he has is valuable and the Imperium is willing to trade to get him back. They're not the most interested in keeping Emile from having the Beowulf, but here's the demand or complication. The anonymous robed figure says,
We can certainly trade ships as you propose. But once you have the Beowulf back as your ship, you will need to come with me to speak with the High Chancellor.
Why would that have anything to do with this? No, I'm not going to the Terminus. I have business elsewhere.
Your presence will be needed in order to explain this.
And at that moment, the anonymous figure pulls back their hood, and we see that the slightly sublimating face that's underneath is none other than Emile Spencer. Dun dun dun! What the hell is going on with that? That's, of course, a question for next time. I'll freely admit that this episode is a little on the shorter end, but when I had a moment like that come up where we have that sort of reveal, like there was just never going to be a better place to leave it than that. So I figured, let's cut it off there, we'll reapproach next week. But I do have a little bit of cleanup work that I feel like should be addressed regarding connections. We talked about how one of the triggers to develop a relationship is to stand with somebody against hardship. And I think this continued process with Cypher, where we were all in the smoke and trying to save Valkyrie and escape, like all that whole process definitely counts for standing with them against hardship. In a way, the hardship isn't really over, but we do have our negotiations that have got us through the worst of it. So I am going to give myself one bit of progress on that, bringing us up to 4 full boxes with Cypher. However, in addition to that, Emile has made a deal with the Imperium about giving them their ships back. Like, he's willing to work with the enemy here, and I think that's definitely worthy of the trigger when your relationship with a connection is tested through conflict, betrayal, or circumstance. This is like a little bit of a betrayal. I think Cypher has a chance to maybe understand and be like clearly the circumstances, like we just gotta take what we can get. But Cypher has every reason to not be happy about this, so we are going to make a roll out of this during this kind of cleanup part. So I roll plus heart. We don't share a bond, so I don't add +1 to it, but making a heart roll, we get... Okay, it's a weak hit. Develop your relationship, but also envision a demand or complication as a fallout of this test. So that'll bring us up to 5 boxes with Cypher, but the complication is going to be something I'll probably play it out more fully in the next session. We'll get like an actual scene out of it. But Cypher is going to demand that Emile find a way to not actually get them the ships back. Like, pull one over on the Imperium. She probably even believes, like, that's why she's okay with it, is that clearly this is all just part of some ruse that Emile's cooking up. And maybe it's that. It's less like a demand and more Cypher will deliver this expectation that, you know, when they get a moment to themselves, like, of course you're not actually going to do it, right? Like, that sort of thing. We'll explore that more fully in the next episode. Might make that the vignette. We'll see. But for now, we have this week's prompts. And for this week, I would like you to tell me about a game of chance, some kind of gambling thing that a culture does. Something they bet on, or just otherwise like something you would find in a casino or other kind of gambling event environment. What is something that people wager on one way or another? And we're going to do it with the action and theme of secure and opportunity. So tell me all about how secure and opportunity lead to a game of chance or gambling event of some kind. What does that all mean? Send me your ideas, starforgedpod@gmail.com, or you can always leave them in the thread that we have in the Starforged/Ironsworn Discord. I'll read it there as well. Anything like that is always much appreciated, and I speak not just for myself, but probably any small-time creators out there. Anytime that you can find a way to participate or give feedback, whether that's leaving a comment or a review or a rating or whatever, anytime that you engage with that process and let us know we're making something that's getting heard by people, it goes a far way. So, until next week, play me out, music.